Welcome to another episode of the Becca's Talking Podcast, where every Tuesday at 10 a.m. a new podcast is released, and it's everyday people with interesting stories to tell, a little bit about Omaha, a little bit about life, a little bit everything. And if you haven't checked out all the different podcasts, go to the Becca's Talking Facebook page or WWT.com and the Becca's Talking link there, and you can check all the archived podcasts along with the one we're going to be doing here in a moment. But I want to get to that after I tell you about our advertiser, which is Havana Garage in the Old Market. You know, you can take Orbit down to the Old Market and have a nice time at Havana Garage. Havana Garage with great cocktails, great atmosphere, and of course, if you're a cigar smoker, they've got a humidor. You can have a cigar in there, relax, great conversation, a great place for business meetings, a great place to go and go if you're going to an event down at the Holland or the CHI Center or wherever it might be. There's always a great time at Havana Garage in the Old Market. When you stop on by, tell them you heard about it on the Becca's Talking Podcast, if you would be so kind. And I mentioned that you could take Orbit down to the Old Market because my guest is Lauren Cencic. She is the CEO from Metro Transit, and we're going to talk a little bit about public transportation here in Omaha, and because there's some changes going on. One of those is a thing called, microtransit? Yeah, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so what is microtransit? What are you guys doing?
So microtransit is really a mix between transit and rideshare. So it really does not have a fixed route that travels on a regular schedule, but is really a demand-based service where a smaller vehicle like a minivan would come and pick you up at your destination and help connect that trip to transit. So what Metro's doing right now is we are seeking community input on a proposed project that would try microtransit as a pilot for 3 years and really give us a chance to test this whole new technology to connect people.
Now you say whole new technology. Is this being done in other markets?
It is. So there's a lot of transit agencies that are doing things like microtransit. Lincoln has a microtransit system. So does Des Moines, Kansas City, Denver. There's a lot of places, and we're really learning from the lessons learned from those cities.
Okay, I want to talk a bit about just public transportation in general.
Sure.
Because, we see what's happening here in Midtown with the development that's going on, or, on Farnham Street with the development that's going on downtown, with the development of Midtown Crossing and all that. There's a lot of inflow of people living out here. So public transportation is going to be more important to Omaha now and in the future than it has been in years past. But yet there's still somewhat of a stigma, if I'm not mistaken, about some people just won't take the bus. Why is that?
Yeah, so, I think that stigma is something that is breaking down and not really, nearly as present it used to be. Metro is never in a position where we're going to argue that the bus is for everybody and that is the only way that we need to travel. Really, what's important to us is providing people with options. So we have employees, we have customers who drive sometimes, and that's going to be the trip that works for them. They're also going to take transit, and they're going to walk, and they're going to bike. It's really about providing those choices and providing options, and not necessarily a one way or the other.
And it's
not a competition.
No, okay, well, all right, no, good. So that is, it's like everybody working together, and we'll get to the streetcar in a little bit here. But you talk about options. I want to get more into the microtransit.
Yes.
I know you've held some public hearings already. What are people telling you about this idea of having? Are these like minivans, or are they more like the sort of the vans that you see at the airport, taking you from remote parking to the terminal?
Yeah, so different cities do it in different ways. I've seen them as kind of smaller shuttle vans as well as minivans. For our initial pilot, we're looking at starting this with minivans, and a number of those would be equipped with a lift so that somebody using a mobility device would be able to use the service as well.
And it's geared towards who then?
So really, it's geared towards everybody. One of the things that's really exciting about microtransit is it's going to accommodate people who live near a bus route, those who maybe don't or live a little bit too far from a current bus route, and help connect them into our system. Individuals with disabilities who would normally ride our Mobi service, they're all going to be able to use this service. The way it works, and it's really interesting, is part of your trip might be in this minivan type of service on demand. Part of your trip might be on a regular bus route, or it might be all on this in this smaller microtransit vehicle. So there's an algorithm behind this, and the way it works is when you say, I'm starting in this location and I want to go to this location, it's going to look at how to best make that trip for you. And part of it might be in this shared ride minivan, and part of it they might connect you into a bus route to finish the rest of your trip.
Okay, so let's say I'm using the microtransit. Okay, what I call, is it an app?
Yep. So primarily it'll be an app, but we want to make sure that everybody, including those who don't have smartphones, can use the service. So there'll be an option to call and book a trip as well.
So I call because I'm old. I can't figure out the app. So I call or I use the app and schedule the minivan or whatever to pick me up, the microtransit. And at the same time, somebody a mile and a half away from me has also scheduled it, and somebody a mile and a half away from them has also scheduled it. Am I going to get picked up and then go to route number 1 and then route number 2 before we get to the bus, or how does that work?
It's really going to depend and be dynamic each time. So there'll be 3 proposed zones, and in each zone there'll be a number of vehicles moving around. So it is a shared ride. So it is quite possible that you'll get to make some friends along the way. That after you're picked up, might go pick up somebody else, especially if you're headed in the same general direction. But sometimes you'll be in the vehicle by yourself, and it's really going to depend on the number, the demand, as well as how many vehicles are available at that time.
Is there any cost to the rider?
There is. We're not exactly sure what that's going to be yet. Most transit agencies who do this consider it a premium service, so it's generally about double of a regular fixed route fare. So we're proposing $3 as a possible fare, and that's one of the things we're asking the public to provide some feedback to us right now and share their input on whether they think that's about right, too much, or too little.
It is still cheaper than Uber.
It is much cheaper than an Uber,
so,
for
okay,
sure.
So with this, by the way, when's the target date to start this?
So we are going to be contracting with a vendor to do that. So we still have to work very much with that vendor to come up with a target date. I don't have a specific date, but we are working as fast as we can to implement it, and it will definitely be in 2025.
Is the vendor just supplying the vehicles, or is the vendor also supplying the drivers? What does the vendor do?
Yeah, so the vendor is going to provide the technology behind it, the app, as well as the vehicles and the operators.
Okay. So basically, once you set it up, then Metro Transit, then your hands are going to be clean from it, right? Somebody else is going to be handling this?
Well, we will be working very closely with the vendor. One of the things that's so important to us is that this fits into our overall fleet of services. So Metro operates regular bus services, Orbit, Mobi, and this is going to be a new service type for us. So we're going to be very involved in making sure riders know how to use it, communicating, educating, managing the contract, ensuring that it meets our highest quality standards. So we don't get to quite wash our hands of it.
Okay, so one of the a couple of things that I've heard about people that have criticisms of public transportation in this city is that the buses don't really work for their work schedule. The buses the routes are too far away from where they live. Things like that. Do you think this microtransit will help with that, or is will the microtransit be on like a 24-hour cycle? In other words, if I need to get somewhere from here to there at 3 a.m, will that be available, or is it a thing where being the basic bus route times?
Yeah, so there are proposed service hours. Generally would be 7 days a week, but would probably end a little bit earlier than that. So that is something that's on our website at ometro.com. People can go in, weigh in. We are seeking public feedback on what those proposed hours are. None of that is set in stone yet, but really would be not a 24-hour service. In terms of your question, a little bit more of some of the criticisms and connections, this is one of the goals of microtransit, is helping to kind of serve people that maybe the fixed route system doesn't quite work for them. Maybe they're a little bit too far from a bus stop. Maybe it's hard. The times don't work in terms of a bus, and this is really going to be able to help them better access the services that we already offer.
Yeah, as far as the times go, that's an interesting thing too, because I'm thinking, and this is probably things that may still have to be working out. I've got to get to where I'm going by 3 o'clock. Mm-hmm. The bus that'll take me there leaves at 2:15. What guarantee will there be if I call that A, I'll get to the bus stop in time for the 2:15, or B, I won't have to go and wait for an hour and a half for the 2:15 bus to get there?
And that's really the beauty behind this technology. And I will say it's going to be new for us in Omaha and new for us at Metro, so there'll be some learning curves and we'll work through it. But it integrates with the technology that Metro has that tracks our buses. So one of the things you may not know about is we have an app called My Ride that allows people to actually track the GPS location of all of their buses. So if a bus is running behind or is on a detour, we can actually see where that is. And this new technology will be able to coordinate with that and help make sure those trips happen. And so, for example, if a bus trip is canceled, be able to connect you to a different point or a different route with the microtransit.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about Orbit.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken Orbit, and quite honestly, if I'm just going downtown, it's like I said, I live in Dundee, so I don't live far from the Orbit stop. So if I'm going downtown, it works real good and it's saving money on parking and everything. So it's good. But the complaint that I hear from so many people is that nobody's on the bus. Nobody's ever on the bus. And I've only taken it like 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And with the exception of the time that I took it down to the College World Series, there weren't many people on the bus. Is Orbit too big for how you're using it?
No, it's not. So there are times when there's not a lot of people on the bus. That's absolutely true. I've also been on Orbit and other routes where it is standing room only, and it can change so fast. I've been on Orbit trips where at one point in the beginning of the route, there were 50 people on the bus, and 10 minutes later at the end of the route, we're down to a handful. It very much depends, and there's ebbs and flows throughout the day. One of the other reasons that people don't realize why the Orbit vehicles are so big is because of the accessibility features of the raised platforms. So because we have higher platforms for people to be able to walk directly onto the bus without having to step up, with that, we weren't able to put bike racks on the front of the buses like we normally do. So a big portion of the interior of the Orbit buses is actually so people can hang their bikes in there because like a normal bus, they can't go on the front. So it's more than just we thought we needed 60 foot to cram people in. It's also about some of those features and like the level boarding that we're able to provide with that service.
What about the bicycles?
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of people that do. When I have been on Orbit, I have seen people bring their bike on and then they get off and go whatever way they can. I guess, I'll admit, I'm more of a car guy. That does not appeal to me, but there's a lot of people that does. What is the appeal? And I mentioned before about people that say there's a stigma against it, but there's also people there that have an appeal towards riding a bus, taking Orbit, taking their bicycle and that. What is the appeal to that? Why do people do that? If they might have access to a car or they might have access to other transportation, why would they take a bus?
Oh, there's lots of reasons. And frankly, it's about the cheapest chauffeur you can find.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of us love driving. I'm one. I do drive. I drive my car frequently. But if I have an opportunity for someone else to drive me, that is great. And Metro, so one of the things we're very proud of is we offer free Wi-Fi inside all of our buses. It is a great time to take a nap, to read a book, do some work, to do something other than just, paying attention to focusing on driving. There's quite a few people who find that is a much better start or end to their work day than the stress of sitting in traffic driving.
And with all the, like I said, all the building that's going on in Blackstone and the Dundee area and that, a lot of apartments, a lot of condos, more people are using public transportation now, and they are getting rid of the car, or at least driving the car a lot less.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about transportation is it is so tied into land use planning. So how a city grows, how big it is, how dense it is, how spread out things are, how walkable it is, very, very much speaks to the quality and type of public transit that can be offered. One of the things that I try to say a lot is that nobody's trying to get from a bus stop to a bus stop, right? You got to get to and from your actual destination. And that means everybody who is a bus rider starts as a pedestrian. And so when we think about it that way, making sure that a neighborhood is walkable, has good sidewalks, it's safe to cross the street, you're able to cross the street without waiting a few miles till the next red light. All of that is very much going to impact, one, not only how effective transit's going to be, but also what that experience is going to be for the passengers on that bus.
Now, when you talk about Omaha public transportation, is it the city limits, or are you also dealing with Papillion and Ralston and La Vista, as well as anything in Council Bluffs? I mean, is it the entire metro area?
Oh, what a great question with very complicated answer, so pardon me as I power through this. So Metro recently converted to the Regional Metropolitan Transit Authority of Omaha. So that means we can grow outside the city of Omaha limits. Right now, we are limited. Our service area is limited to the city of Omaha limits. However, we do operate service in Papillion, La Vista, Bellevue, Council Bluffs, but we do that through contracts with those cities. So we actually enter into contracts between that city and Metro to provide that service. Part of what's really exciting is we just converted to this regional authority means that there's now a pathway for those cities to join us if they so choose. And it's the first time in Metro's history that we really get to grow and not just be limited to the city boundaries.
What do you say if they so choose? Wouldn't they want to be a part of that?
They would. Now, obviously, Metro is publicly funded, and we operate our services primarily with property taxes, so those cities would also be subject to Metro's tax levy, and that needs to be approved by the city council of those cities.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. You know, where does the funding come from? Is it primarily property taxes?
Primarily property taxes.
The governor wants to cut property taxes. What kind of problems do you see with that? I mean, would that affect you, or is that a local issue and not a state issue?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say all of those things. Now we are, we are actually a political subdivision of the state, so we are subject to those state requirements, and that's the basis on which we are able to levy our property tax. I will say Metro's property tax is really very small compared to some of the other big ones on the property tax bill. And we'll see how that conversation goes. So far, I think there's been a lot of support and from a lot of constituents and a lot of different groups, realizing, even if you don't take the bus, public transit really provides connections to people, places, and opportunities, and it's really a service that is important. Our partners, the MPO MAPA, a few years ago did a return on investment study and found a very conservative estimate, probably much, much more than this, that for every dollar we spend on public transit, the return on investment is at least $2, in many cases much, much more than that. If you think about it in terms of we spend money on parks and theaters and places for people to go and libraries, and we have to remember at the same time, people need to be able to get to those to be able to enjoy that investment. And we have a huge number of people in our community who their only opportunity to get to work, to get to school, to get to live their life and meet with other people is through public transit. And so if you think about the number of people who wouldn't be able to go to school, wouldn't be able to go to their job without us, it really is an important thing for our community to pay attention to and invest in.
What is the demographic of the bus rider?
We got a little bit of everything, and that's the thing. That's the thing I love.
Okay, so you got people that maybe don't have a car, people that maybe had their license taken away from them, people that are old, and people that are young, and people that are going to work, and people that are just going downtown or the old market for something to do. So, is there really a demographic for the bus rider?
Really, there's not. We've got folks that really have no other choices, don't have a car or have very limited incomes, and we've got folks in business suits riding the bus. One of the things that has been probably our biggest area of growth in the last few years is middle and high school students. So we started a K through 12 Rides Free program, and our student ridership is through the roof right now.
As opposed to the school buses. Why? In other words, why aren't the school buses doing the job, or is this a thing that you're just helping out people that maybe the school bus doesn't come to where they live, or why would the kids be using a Metro bus as opposed to the regular school bus?
So there's a number of reasons. One, I would say, in terms of getting to school, a lot of kids maybe choose a school in a different area. That would be something that the yellow school bus wouldn't provide, and they would rely on Metro to get there. We also see a lot of trips not just to school. So we have students who will take it to go visit their friends after school. Will go to their after-school job. Will use it to go to an internship, or maybe they're going to, in the middle of the day as a part of their class, take a class at Metro Community College. They'll take the bus to go get to those. So it's much more than just getting to and from school.
And you got the kids that might be in the Omaha Metropolitan School District, but at the same time, they're great athletes, and so they got to bus them out to West Side so they can win state championships. But that's another topic for another day.
It's a little outside my area of expertise.
I'm sorry. I just little pet peeve of mine. I want to talk to you about. We've talked about the streetcars. That's a part of the whole transportation scenario here in Omaha, and I'll get to that in a second. But I want to talk to you for a moment, if I may, about the fine folks there at Havana Garage in the Old Market. Havana Garage. It's got that Rat Pack atmosphere there. You got pictures of Sammy and Dean, and of course the chairman of the board, all there, along with a great selection of cocktails, cigars. And you don't have to smoke a cigar to enjoy Havana Garage. It's the atmosphere, it's the people, it's the service that you'll receive. Stop on by, tell them I sent you when you do it. But yeah, Havana Garage in the Old Market. So we're talking about the streetcar, which has been very controversial and all that, but it's going to happen. They're tearing up the streets right now. It's going to happen. But you're not involved with the streetcar at all, are you?
So Metro is not the sponsor or lead on the streetcar. That is really a city project that is being managed by a new entity, the Omaha Streetcar Authority. Metro has a very vested interest in making sure that the streetcar is really a piece of the overall picture in terms of mobility options for the region. So just like I said before, it's not buses or cars, it's not buses or streetcar. Our top priority is making sure that we're sharing our expertise so that as the city decided to do this project, it is successful, and that we're integrating it for our passengers so that they can seamlessly travel between the two systems, get information, learn about how it might work, instead of everything being too completely unconnected, don't know how to get information about one from the other.
So yeah, although you're not really involved with it, you will be involved when it comes to schedules and working together to make sure that the citizens get the best use out of it. Well, that made sense. What else do people need to know about public transportation? Well, because I look at it and I think about Omaha just, again, being a car town. If you go to, I lived in Atlanta, and I used light rail there all the time. If you go to New York or Chicago, a lot of these cities like that, public transportation is rampant. It's taken a while to really become that way here in Omaha. It's moving in that direction, but it's taken a while. What do you want people to know about public transportation in general?
Yeah, so really, I think, one of the things is thinking about how much we invest in public transit is important from really the flexibility of it. You mentioned some of those other cities where there's light rail and there's lots of services that you use all the time. Part of why people use those services more is really the flexibility and the opportunities that they provide. So if you think about a bus that runs once every 30 minutes versus a bus that runs every 10 or 15 minutes, that's a very different experience. I am one of those people that is perpetually late for everything in my life, and inevitably I'm headed out the door and my dog needs something or grabs something off the counter, or I forget my coffee cup and have to run back in. If that meant that I was going to miss my bus and I had to wait 30 more minutes, I'm going to drive. If it is something that the bus comes in every 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's really not the same level of disruption to your life. So one of the things Metro is focusing on is not only making sure we're ensuring that we're covering all of the places that we need to, or as many as we can afford within our budget, but that also that quality of that service is there too. It shouldn't be just I'm taking the bus because I have to, right? It really can and should be a chance for you to decompress, not have to worry about the stress of driving, get there safely, reliably. I'll tell you, one of the times I ride the bus regularly, but one of the times I do it the most is in the winter. I hate driving in winter in the ice and snow. I would much rather have a professional driver drive me, and I will take advantage of that any day of the week.
We've been lucky we haven't had too much snow this year, but
where's the wood to knock on? Come on, I run a transportation company. That's a bad word for us.
I would imagine so. Yeah, because I mean, we had that big ice storm here, a month or so ago. That shut down the buses, but then pretty much shut down the entire city. So it's not like I'm not picking on you in that regard, but there are definitely obstacles, I guess, sometimes when it comes to the weather, when it comes to public transportation. I really do appreciate this, and I think that it is important that we have a solid infrastructure for that. Because you're right, not everybody does have a car. Not everybody can drive. Not everybody wants to drive. And as we give them more options, I think it's better for the city. And I also think it's one of the things that when people look to move to a city, they look for things like that. If you want to live in a city, you want to live in a city, and that includes public transportation.
It does. And public transit really can bring in economic development. It can attract businesses. And, one of the things I like to say is how well Metro does our job now is really going to shape what the region looks like 20, 30 years from now. How equitable we're going to be, how many kids that are in school now stayed here versus going to somewhere else to work, how walkable the city will be, and really, like you said, economic development. We hear all the time about businesses when they're choosing where to locate a new factory, a new headquarters, a new office. One of the things they look at is what is the quality of that public transit, because they know, especially the new and incoming younger workforce, that's where they want to live, is in a place where they've got multiple options of how they can commute. And so they know if they're going to retain and attract talent, they need to be in a city that offers those things.
All right. Well, appreciate you taking time to join us here today. And again, the podcast is up every Tuesday. Every Tuesday we got a new podcast for you, and you don't know who it's going to be, what it's going to be talking about, a little bit of everything. And you'll find out more on some behind-the-scenes looks and everything else if you go to the Becca's Talking Facebook page. And you can find out some of the stuff that we got going on, some things that we don't talk about on the podcast, but we'll talk about on the Facebook page. So check that out, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And tell the folks at Havana Garage that you appreciate them getting behind these podcasts and being our sponsors so that we can bring you everyday people with interesting stories to tell. Lauren, I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Till next time, take care and bye, y'all.